Hey everybody, okay, it's Friday and that means it's another coding cast. Now what I'm going to do this time around is still coding related, but in a different way. I actually need to set up a new Ubuntu VM, so I'm just getting prepared here and then I'm going to show you how to go from beginning to end with that. Alright, so what do we got here? Okay, so first of all, I'm using Parallels for Mac 15. Actually the Pro version, but it doesn't matter, it's just Parallels for Mac. The Pro just means it's a yearly subscription, basically. Now, I've got a couple of VMs set up already. I've got an Ubuntu 18.04. I'm sure you'd love for me to run the macOS Big Sur, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to tease you with it. But I do have a working version of that, and I will get to it in the future. But what I want to do is set up a new Ubuntu 20.04, I believe it is, the LTS. So I've already downloaded the ISO image, and I'm going to show you how I set one up from scratch here. I like to use, Ubuntu for development testing, and it's just a nice desktop to play around with. And I guess that's the big point of VMs, virtual machines, and especially running in Parallels for Mac, is you get to play around with operating systems, and if you screw it up completely, it doesn't matter, right? It's just a file on the hard drive, basically, and you can just delete it and start again. So let me show you that quickly. I'm going to right-click here on this Ubuntu 18, and I'm going to say Show in Finder. Here it is, and you can see that what these actually are two very big files, right? So if I want to back them up, I can just copy this file somewhere, and it's going to be backed up for me, and it's going to be fantastic because if I need to restore it, I can just copy this file back or run it from wherever I want. So that's why I like to use Parallels. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up a new virtual machine. You'll actually see that they are listed here, like here's Ubuntu, you've got quite a few other options. And the reason I'm not going to do it this way is currently, as of this recording, if I do it here with this download Ubuntu, it's going to be 18.04, which is not what I want. So I'm actually going to install Windows or another OS from a DVD image or file. So I'm just going to click that and go continue. Now when I do that, it's going to search for images. It found one that I have on my desktop here, which is the one I just downloaded, 2004 desktop AMD 64. That's the one I want. So I'm just going to say continue. If it wasn't, I would just go choose manually, point it to the ISO file, and carry on, okay? So I'm going to say, okay, there's just a security warning. First thing it's going to want to do is it's going to say, okay, well, we need to set up a Linux username and password for this machine that you're going to set up. So for now, I'm just going to use my name here. I'm going to put a password in. I'm just going to say, all right, there we go. Just a quick short one just for this demo video purposes, and go continue. So my username is going to be Peter, okay? Consists of less than characters. You should consider a stronger one. All right, well, we're going to change it then. See if I can make it happy here. Okay, there you go. So I'm going to call this Ubuntu 20.04. That's the name that you see appearing in the list here, okay? In fact, let's do this. Let's move that up there. Put this here. And I'm going to save it to the same place as the other ones. It's telling me it's going to use 5.26 gigabyte of space. We'll get to that shortly. Create alias on the Mac desktop. I don't want that, so I'm going to leave that off. But I am going to customize settings before installation. And you don't have to, but I really think you were going to want to for performance purposes. And I'll show you that as well. So I'm going to go create. When I do that, it's going to create the new virtual machine, and it's going to give me the options because I asked it to give me options. And here's the reason why. So, Ubuntu 20.04 is the name. I'm going to say this is an LTS release just in the notes here so I know. Now let's go over the options. because there's quite a few, and it's going to seem a little daunting, but we don't need to change all of these, just some of them. I do want it to start up and shut down automatically, manually. I like to control that so that if anything goes wrong, I can get in and mess around with it. Now for optimization, resource usage, I am running this, just so you know, on a MacBook Pro 16-inch with the i9 processor and plenty of RAM, plenty of space. So I'm going to say no limit because it'll be fine. Sharing, this is an interesting one. This is really your choice when you're setting this up. Personally, one of the reasons I like to use VMs is I can isolate them from everything else. So if there's something horrible happens, or I screw something up, or whatever it may be, it does not affect the rest of my system. So I'm actually not going to share any of these, but we'll come back to this in a second. I'm just going to leave it alone. Applications, I don't want to share my Linux applications on the Mac. What that means is I would get, they would appear down here, any applications that I've got installed. So if I'm using something like they call coherence mode, where it's kind of like a transparent desktop mode, I guess is a way I would describe it, as good as any. What it does is it shows you the applications, but they appear as if they're just applications in the Mac that I have here. I don't want to do that because, again, isolation, so I'm going to disable those. And so they're all turned off. This one we can leave alone, doesn't matter here. Full screen, use all displays in full screen. We'll come back to this. I'm not going to do this here. I like to run it in a window, at least for the first time. I don't play games on it, so I don't care about this. Picture in picture, I'm not going to use it, so it doesn't matter. Travel mode, again, I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm not going to use it. Now, the more options. So it's going to sync the time setting from my Mac, which is fine. I don't want to share the Mac clipboard. Again, if you had that turned on, you could copy and paste from your Mac into the VM, which is useful for many things, don't get me wrong. But again, for me, it's all about isolation, so I'm going to leave that alone. I am going to leave the update parallel tools automatically turned on. Parallel tools are, think of them as like drivers and that get installed to make the VM run in an optimal performance and give you like a good display options and those kind of things. We are going to do this. You will see this once we've got the basic OS set up. So I'm going to leave the rest of those alone there. Let's go over to the hardware. This is the really important one. So this is where you essentially determine the performance of your VM. Now on the processors, this is cores basically, right? So you can see that I've got 16 cores here. I got plenty, love it, love my Mac. I'm going to go with 8 because, well, it's probably overkill, to be honest. I mean, I really could leave it at 2 for what I'm using it for, but I'm going to set it at 8 because it's just in the middle there. Memory, I'm just going to bump this up a bit. I want it to have a little more. I don't want it to have a little breathing room, and because when I'm running my VMs, it's not like I'm going to be running a ton of like resource applications with it that are going to hog the system and drag it down. When I'm running the VM, even if I'm coding and testing and everything else, I'm only going to be running what I need because I know I'm going to be running a VM. So I think it's going to be perfectly fine to just say, let's just give it 3 here, right? So we're going to just say, give it 3. That'll be fine. I'm still within the recommended. You can see the maximum on my system is 16. So 3 gig of RAM is going to be fine. Graphics, 64. Not really great, I'll be honest. I'm going to switch it back to auto recommended. It's going to use what it thinks is best. Just set it to that and leave it alone. This one here is an interesting one, resolution. So you can have it scaled, and then there's this more space option. This is something you're going to have to play with on your systems, and you'll see it come into operation again once we've got the VM actually installed and I go through and tweak the settings to what I want. Advanced settings, I'm just going to leave that alone. Don't need to touch that. So I'm going to leave it for scaled for now. Mouse and keyboard, I'm going to leave it fine alone as it is. It's just going to work. Shared printers, I'm not going to use this, so I'm going to turn them off. Network, I'm going to share it with the Mac. So whatever the Mac is actually using, the VM is going to use that too. That's going to be fine for my purposes. Sound and camera, again, it's really up to you and your choice. I'm just going to leave it alone. USB and Bluetooth, I leave these as they are. And anytime I plug a device into the USB port and I have the VM running, Parallels is going to ask me, do you want this USB device, like say a memory stick? Do you want me to connect it to the Mac, or do you want me to connect it to the VM? So it's going to give me the option. That's the way I like it. Okay, so this is one here, hard disk. Right now, it's going to be very minimal, okay? On advanced settings, what you can do is you can go in and you can say, okay, properties, and you can specify a size. Now, let me go through this because this can catch a lot of people out. If I set this, and this is actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, this is essentially the maximum. I'm saying I want the maximum disk size for this VM to be up to 128 gig, right? Which is actually kind of high, right? In fact, we could probably just say like 90. You want to give it some breathing room because, you know, once Ubuntu starts releasing patches and you have to install those, and depending on what applications and everything else you're going to install, you're going to consume that space. So actually I am going to set it to 128. Because at first, it's not going to use 128 gig. Let me explain why. This one here, this checkbox that's checked, expanding disk, it's going to start out small. And then as it needs to grow for more storage space, you know, you start using it, you start putting files on there and everything else, it will expand the VM to consume your actual disk space on the Mac. Hope that makes sense, right? So we're going to be starting out with what we need, and then it's going to allow it to grow over time for what the VM needs up to 128 gig. Hopefully that makes sense. That's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit apply. It's going to say, hey, you know what? This whole resizing thing is very sensitive. If you lose power or something like that, it might screw it up. Well, I'm on a laptop here, so even if I lose power, I got a fully charged battery. I'm just going to say continue. And to be honest, it's really fast. So I'm going to hit continue and see, and it's done already. So now I'm set to 128 gig max. It's going to expand as it needs to. And I'm going to say, okay, great, close. Trim is turned on. You know, leave everything else the same. CD-ROM, it's a Mac. I don't have a CD drive. Boot order, I'm just going to leave it alone. Don't worry about this. But it's going to be CD DVD here first right now because it's going to see that ISO image with the Ubuntu 20.04 as a CD drive, right? So it's going to mount that image as a CD drive so that it can install it. In fact, actually, let me make sure. I should probably set this one here. I think it does it automatically, but I want to make sure. So, you know what? Let's not do it. All right, I'm just going to say source, leave it alone. Boot order, like so. That's it, done. Okay, so that's given us our performance that we're going to need. Here's the one I want to talk about. Isolate Linux from Mac. If I go back over here to General, Options, you remember we got this sharing folder here, and I was saying about how I like to isolate the Mac and not share folders. The reason I didn't change it here is if I go over to Security and I now click this one, Isolate Linux from Mac, it's going to say, hey, if you isolate this, all your shared folders, smart mounts, and everything else are not going to be accessible. You won't be able to copy between the VM or move between the VM and the host operating system. In my case, the Mac. That's exactly what I want. So I'm going to say isolate, because if I now go back over here, it's now grayed out. See, can't do anything here because this is overriding it. That's why I didn't bother setting it on the options tab. Okay, everything else, I'm going to leave it as is on security. Backup, you can tell Time Machine, you know, hey, don't back this file up. I don't back it up because I keep separate snapshots and backups on separate drives because they can take up a lot of space, right? So that's all the configuration done. I'm going to close this configuration here. So here's done. You can see it's updated. It's going to give it 8 CPUs. It's going to use 3 gig of RAM. and it's going to have 137, approximately 138 gig of hard drive space. I'm now going to go continue, and it's going to start setting this thing up for me. So notice that it's now set up on the list here, 20.04. This is an LTS release. It's now starting to do the install for me. So this install now is running from the ISO file, the same as if you was running it on a machine itself, a physical machine. I'm not going to resize the window or anything. I'm just going to leave it as for now. Hopefully, of course, the disk is going to pass verification. It's just running in automatic mode. I'm just letting it do all its own thing here. So it's going to probably take a couple of minutes to do all this stuff. Thankfully, it'll be a lot quicker than the old days where it actually would be copying it from a CD. And I'm sure I know how badly you want me to run that macOS Big Sur up there, but I'm not going to do it in this video. I will in the future, I promise you. I'm still setting it up right now, and I know everybody wants to see it, everybody wants to do it, but I don't want to rush to be like the first person to show it and set it up. I'd rather get it right and make it useful for you than just get some free clicks out of it. All right, almost done copying the files over. And then when it's finished, what it should do is it should then reboot the VM and away we go. Now, I have had instances in the past where it doesn't reboot the VM properly, but at that point, I know it's finished and it's okay for me to shut it down and restart it. So we'll wait and see what happens here. Right now, it's pulling down where it says retrieving files. You can see it's pulling down any of the latest updates to all the packages. So once you run this, you know that you've got the ISO image plus any updates that have been released since that ISO image was released. Okay, so you've really got truly the sort of, in theory, the latest, very up-to-date system from all the packages. I do stress the theory part though, because it should be, but you never know. And it's something that, the system's going to check it for us after we've got all this set up. I'll go through a couple of things once we've got those in there and show you. The fans on my Mac here are going nuts right now. So if you hear them on the mic, I'm sorry. I apologize. It according to this is running at 164 degrees. You can see I'll just click on it. You can see all the temperatures here and the airflows, right? You know, the CPU cores 170. These stats will make you paranoid about heat for sure. Forget about the whole touching the Mac thing and seeing how hot it is above the touch bar. If you look at these numbers, that sort of puts it in perspective. You can see, actually, if you look at the time here, sort of about here, you can see where I started the installation process because it just ramped up the heat. Something terrible. So I'm hoping this hasn't hung, and it is running. What you can do, and I might risk it here, is, in fact, I wonder if I could risk it and run this one too. I have enough cores and enough RAM, but I don't want to. If at any time you find that you've got a problem, if you look up here on the menu, you'll see that there's this installation. You can suspend it and stop it and everything else, and then go back and check and see if it's working. But it looks like it's done. It's now rebooting. Yeah, because you see how this menu changes up here? It's now got the full menu. Like, for example, under actions, I can pause the VM, suspend, shut down, restart it. So you can override it here if you want to. Okay, so here we are. Now it's installed. I'm going to log in. Hit return, and I'm just, notice how as well, how I can just move the Mac over the VM, and this, like, there's the VM, and now I'm back in my Mac, right? It's just nice to be able to just go out the window, do something, come back in the window and carry on. I'm going to skip the online accounts. Live patch is something new to me. As I say, it's been a while since I set up a VM. I'm going to let it do it. What it does is there are some patches, like security patches, that it can do without having to restart your machine, and it can do those in the background for you. And I'm going to say go ahead and do that. Oh, okay. I gotta log into my account. I'm not going to do that right now. Then I'll just come back to it. Yeah, I'm happy to send them information on this to make it better. I'm not going to turn on location services. And now it's saying, hey, it's ready to go. You can install any of these packages, but I'm just going to say done. So here's my desktop. So I now have a running machine, right? And you can see it's very responsive, right? I'm going to right click and how quick that is. I'm going to open up Firefox. You know, all these things are truly responsive because we set up all that configuration setting for this. Now, I did notice, I don't want it to warn me, just close the tabs. So it did detect a couple more changes, very small ones, that have been set here. And I'm going to say, yeah, okay, you know, go ahead and install those. Might as well start off fresh, right? So I'm going to put the password in there. It's going to do that for me. Now, one of the things at this point that you're going to want to do is, and it's optional, but for true, like really good performance and graphics and everything else, I'm going to really strongly recommend that what you do is you go up to actions and, you know, it's going to say reinstall parallel tools. I'm going to do it anyway. I just want to really make sure that those parallel tools are installed because that's what's going to give me performance, and it's going to allow me to scale the desktop and the graphics are going to work better. So if I, all right, let's just put this in. Because what I can do is, if I just move this over here, right, you'll see that it's gonna let me scale to whatever desktop size I want. I'm running this here on an external 27-inch monitor, and I want to say at the moment the window here for Ubuntu is probably over 2,000 pixels wide at this point. it never hurts to reinstall these tools. Even if it's installed them previously, it's not gonna, it shouldn't cause you any problems, right? You should be able to just say, hey, just start using these. Now notice that it's got the the CD here. We don't need that anymore. We're going to change that in a setting in a second. We're just going to have these tools complete. A couple of things I like to do after I've cleaned up though is, first thing I like to do is just get rid of some of these. I just don't need them, so I'm going to remove that from favorites. I'm just going to remove all these things I'm not going to use. Files, Thunderbird Mail, I'm not going to use it. I do like to keep Firefox on there. And then, like I said, we're going to take care of these two in a second. And I think this one is the help. There used to be an Amazon one, which I'm glad is not on there anymore. All right, I'm going to restart the machine. I want you to see how quick it is. So it's now restarting the VM. And hopefully it's going to be a lot quicker than the last time because it doesn't have to do a big install and prior properties. Yep, there we go. All right, I'm going to click here, just log me in. You could have it auto log you in if you wanted. That's probably something normally on, if it's just a development machine that I'm setting up, I'll have it just set to log in and spin up whatever I need. Now, let's go back over. So we've now got the tools installed. So like I say, I can rescale this desktop to any size I want. But if I click down here for show applications and things like that, you'll see that this is, I mean, it's a really good performance, right? I'll be honest, I don't think if I didn't tell you that this was running under a VM, you wouldn't notice it, at least here live on the system. I'm not sure on the stream and the recording, it might be seem a little different because of the video encoding, but I mean, it's just running really nicely. I'm going to remove that one there. Okay, so let's deal with these, right? So what I'm going to do is I want to show you a different way to do this. Now, first of all, I could just shut the machine down in here and shut down Ubuntu like you normally would. But you can also do it up here on the Parallels menu. So I can actually say shut down, and it's going to initiate the shutdown, a clean shutdown in the OS, the same as if I did it in the OS. Now, the reason that's useful, like I say, sometimes if there's a problem, something like that, it's nice to be able to override it. It's also nice that you've got these actions to pause it or suspend it. And if I was to close the window, it would send it to sleep, and it would just be in sleep mode over here, which means if I then start running it again, it'll boot up. Well, it's not even booting. It's just basically going into hibernation and coming back again. So that's what's going on there. So I'm going to close this. And you can see it's sleeping there, okay? Just wanted to show that. And I'll just hit play. It's going to come up. It's in shutdown mode at the moment. But what I want to show you is, if we go over to the configuration here, you'll notice it'll say some of these things you can't change while the machine is running, right? Even though it's shutting down, the virtual machine is running at the moment and you can't change them. But what you can do now is you can turn off the boot CD DVD order because you're not going to need it once it's shut down because you're going to be booting from the VM, right? Same with these. You see how we have these two sources here for the DVDs. We don't need those. We can now disconnect them because they're just not going to be needed. We've done the install. We've got the tools in there and everything else. The tools should update themselves, by the way, at this point. That's what we have it set to do. So that's it. It's shutting down. There we go. So now it's fully shut down. So I'm just going to go in here again, and I'll just show you that you can now change these other options that you couldn't before. Okay. So disconnected. We're just going to run it again. It'll be real fast here. And this method, by the way, works for other operating systems as well. You can do the same with Windows. I'm probably going to set up a server version, maybe CentOS, something like that, that I use as a sort of in-house development server. That's another great use for running a virtual machine here on Parallels. So there you go. We're now fully in the system. You can see we've got this nice clean bar. There's really honestly not much else that you need to do at this point, right? I mean, everything is set up and configured. From here on out, it's however you want to use and tweak the system or install software. So that's it. We're done here. We've got a fully working Ubuntu VM. I'll show you that the networking is working. It goes out through the host networking on the Mac. We'll just go to my website and let's hope it comes up, right? Okay, got it. There you go. See, so we've got fully working internet access as well. That's my website, by the way, in case you want to go here. I'll probably list this video here once it's done. A bunch of other videos as well and some podcasts. Anyway, just to show you that the internet is working on there. That's it. Folks, we are done here. And we are probably around, if not slightly under the 30-minute mark. And we went from nothing to a fully working Ubuntu 20.04 install. How's that? Well done, Parallels. Makes life so fantastically simple. I strongly cannot recommend it enough. That's it for this stream. I just wanted to show you this here. I'll be editing down a version of this video to a slightly more condensed, taking out some of the gaps while we waited for things to install. I'll put that up on YouTube. That is it. If you want to install a Ubuntu VM, that is exactly how you do it on Parallels. Peace out, everybody. I will speak to you again soon.